I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of the land on which I'm coming to you. The land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, it's upon their ancestral lands from which One Space Love streams to you.
Welcome to Living Story on the One Space Love podcast. I'm your host, Stephania Papadopoulos. On this podcast, I sit down with inspiring guests who share their wisdom and their lived experience with the work that they're doing to help others let go of old stories, embrace who they truly are, and begin living a story where they feel aligned with purpose, with possibility. My hope is that each conversation reminds us to trust in your own unfolding, because your story is still being written. And welcome to Living Story.
You know, there's a concept that I love and don't know where it came from, but I'm, cementing into it more and more and more. You know, Charlie's Angels?
Yes,
The
love it.
movie. You know that bit I actually found out recently, it's called the fire starter scene. There's this scene where, everything's going crazy and the three of them are kind of bouncing off all the things and fighting off the bad guys and all that stuff. And at some point they jump into the boat and they take off.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's in Full Throttle.
Yes.
I think of sometimes in business, I think that there's these Charlie's Angels moments where something in your brain just kind of clicks and you're like, I don't actually know what's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but somehow the pieces of the puzzle must align and realign themselves and the picture must come together in a whole other way. I think there's those moments that you just go, I actually have no choice right now, but literally to surrender, but also to lean in and have full trust and faith in myself, but also in something higher than myself too.
Welcome, Michelle Gardiner, to Living Story on the One Space Love podcast. It's a new series coming out on Fridays, and I really feel blessed to have this opportunity to get you on the new series. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I like to start off by just saying, could you answer the question I am and give a little bit of an intro to who you are?
Such a potent question. It's like the philosopher's timeless question, right?
Yeah.
When I think of I am, I think of the book series I created, the 55 Faces, which the first question was, or the first statement was, this is who I am in the world. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, but maybe not so much recently. So I am. The first thing that comes through is I am a vessel filled with stories, and I think we all are. Essentially, we're a compilation of stories, our individual stories, our collective stories, our interpersonal stories, and then we create our identity based on the stories that we experience through our lifetimes, right? And beyond our lifetimes and before our lifetime. They all shape us in terms of who we are. So who does that then make me? At this point in life, I'm a woman. I identify as a woman. I'm proud to be a woman. I'm intuitive. I'm creative. I'm inspired by the things that we get to do in our lifetime and by doing big things in our lifetime and by big ideas and big concepts. What else am I inspired by? And I think, just love itself. And we get to be for one another through that experience, through all of the experiences, who we get to be for another and how we get to contribute to each other's experiences. Beyond that, I love traveling. I love the world. I love seeing the world. I love being exposed to things that are unfamiliar. I love being stretched. I love being curious. And I love being shaped by the experiences that I've had. And I've had a lot of experiences in life.
That you have. And I mean, that was probably my number one favorite answer to that statement that I ask all the guests since I've been doing the One Space Love podcast. So thank you so much for that answer, that beautiful insight into who you are. You are very much helping women to share stories. What is it that, because I know there's a personal background where in your 20s you worked in child protection. Was there a particular chapter in your life that helped shape your story to help you move into be able to help other people, children, women, open up and share their stories?
Yeah, I think that there have been many, many chapters. And it's fun because sometimes people will say to me, how did you go from doing social work, child protection, to doing what you do now? And I think if you are brave enough to ask questions and be curious and to trust that you will be given nuggets of the answers and to follow that path, almost like Hansel and Gretel, then you'll be led wherever it is that you need to go. So, I mean, when I was 22 and I started out in child protection, I was doing like front end work, which was pretty intense. But I mean, what was my job? My job primarily was to go out and meet people and to ask them about their lives and to gather that information and to tell stories, like whether I was speaking to psychologists, to schools, to, other child protection professionals, sometimes to courts and all of those kind of things. It's all
Yeah.
about gathering information and being able to see like the bigger picture of what was going on here for this family and being able to curate a narrative around that to ideally support the kids in the situation. Obviously, we know enough about child protection to know that's not always the way that things line up, but to curate a perspective that supported that family in some way, which then, the little path led to me running forums and events and leadership training and all kinds of things that were all about helping young people that had a lived experience of child protection.
Within that sector still, like within that, just to clarify. Yeah.
So primarily in that sector to help them to advocate for change at a systemic level. The child protection system, like we're also talking about the education system, the health system, the mental health system a lot as well, and all of the cross-secting systems because they all affect young people's lives, right?
Yes,
When they're
absolutely.
involved in state care. So, and it was actually, I was in my mid-30s and I'd reached this point where I was like, okay, now what happens next? There have been several women that were not necessarily in my world as such, but that I was aware of who were all based in Melbourne that had all passed away for different reasons, all quite traumatic reasons. And every time that happened, I asked myself, like, what am I actually doing here? Like, if there's something more that I've got to offer and I'm not stepping fully into that, because I knew that I was holding back in some way. I knew there was something that I could create myself. However, it was easy enough to stay where I was, and I was given so much creative freedom that I didn't have any need to go anywhere else, and I loved what I was doing. And so there was this higher sense of there's something else that I can step into that's there if and when I want to. And it was at that time where I'd also outgrown my female role models. And I was like, okay, what are my choices here? Because there's always choice, right? I was like, my choices are that I can become the female role model because if I outgrow my female role models, that means that there must be somebody that I can inspire and or I find other female role models. And those two things kind of had to happen in tandem. So yeah, the Aspire series was created and that largely, it started as women's circles. And I joke that it's like a women's circle that blew up because it pretty much is. And I called it the Aspire series because I always wanted to honor the young people that I worked with. And I spent a long time advocating for young people to raise the aspirations of young people. So I love that it's deeply connected to the grassroots community-based work. And I decided that, no matter how high and far and wide it went, I always wanted to be able to connect back to that essence. So yeah, that was fundamentally where and how, the roots of Aspire and my work came from. And through that time, I studied child psychoanalytic psychotherapy and narrative therapy and community work. And I did coaching stuff. I did yoga teaching stuff. I went down every possible rabbit hole of women's work and spiritual stuff and all of the things that
There must have been some sense of connection with self, with your inner self. And so I saw that you studied with Moksha Yoga. I actually know Emma Palmer, the founder of Moksha Yoga. So
Yes.
she is an incredible woman, and I was really happy to see that she was one of your teachers. So is there a particular practice that through all that you've studied that you've taken in to help you tune in and have that awareness? Like, is there something you do daily that you can share just before we move on to the Aspire series? Yeah.
Yeah. Two primary things. The
Yep.
first is journaling and writing. So for many years, I've written a lot. It was actually after my grandmother died that I felt a really strong call to start writing. And that also, I would say, began my spiritual awakening or opening up, I suppose.
Okay.
And at that time,
Why was that? Yeah, sorry, just why was that? What happened there? Yeah.
well, it's funny because I don't think I had a huge level of awareness of what it was at that point. But looking back now, I believe that two women that have passed over, my grandmother and also a friend of mine, Tina, who died of breast cancer, I believe that the two of them feed the spirit of the work that I do. because I believe that if we create something in this world, there's an energetic link to somewhere else that is feeding it and supporting its growth. And if we can tap into that, then, that helps support our backbone in what we create. So at that time, and I was actually speaking to someone on the weekend through the channels that we met through. I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about how often when somebody passes over, that will be an opening of a spiritual channel as
Yes.
a way to remain connected to that person. I think that actually was my grandmother, and I didn't actually know that that's what it was, and I didn't have that language until the weekend. So that was the time when I started writing and I became interested in spiritual kind of concepts, and writing has been a huge part of my journey. And the second part would be movement practices, so yoga and dance. They've both been absolutely fundamental. And the reason why I did my yoga teacher training was because I'd spent so much time studying trauma in the brain. I wanted to know how trauma impacted the body.
Yeah.
And I decided
On
to
a somatic level, isn't it? Like, yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
most people would go and read a book like The Body Keeps the Score, but I went and signed up for 500 hours of yoga teacher training because
Yeah.
I'm a glutton
Yeah.
for punishment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but I came out the other end and I wasn't excited to instruct people how to move their bodies. It's always been about me and my own practice. So that's the same with dance and yoga. And those two things have been absolutely paramount. Beyond that, I think getting out into the sunshine. I mean, it's in Melbourne at the moment. It's there's not a huge amount of sunshine, but getting out into the sunshine is super, super important too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So connection with nature,
Mhm.
journaling, and then the movement of the body. So, really embodying what we're feeling into our body has helped you find that intuition.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you started this Aspire series,
Mm.
and what do you feel you've seen in the courage of the women that have shared the stories?
Absolutely. I'll start by giving a bit of context because
Yes.
that helps to explain the broad diversity of women. So the Aspire series, 55 Faces, which is the primary avenue that women have been published through me with. They essentially almost 300 women have been a part of 55 Faces. 235 have been published across 4 books, and there's 55 women in each book. And the significance of the number 55 is that it stands for significant change aligned with soul purpose. And I believe that it taps each woman into that essence. And each woman answers the same 3 statements, which are, this is who I am in the world. This is the next story I want written for women. And this is the next story I'm writing for myself.
I just got goosebumps.
Yes. I believe that the first one is about our story and how we've come to be in this world. The second one is, if we were to take ourselves as an example and then elevate it, how would we use that to impact the broader collective? Like, what would be the collective message we would send for women? And then the third one is almost like it channels it back home and says, well, okay, so now what am I going to do about it?
Yes.
What am I creating in this world to support this? So I absolutely love it. And in terms of the women, the youngest woman that was involved was 15. The oldest has been 85. They've come from 52 countries. We have women that have been writing their pieces while they've been fleeing war-torn countries. We've had women that are high-end CEOs in Europe. We've had women that have, left marriages, left all kinds of different circumstances, experienced significant trauma throughout their lives, and have overcome all kinds of things. We've had women who have signed up and been a part of it because they wanted to share their birth stories and have those recorded for their kids. We've had women from all kinds of demographics across the world, which I absolutely love, from 6 continents. And something that I'm really passionate about is bringing women together in spaces where they can connect and share and collaborate on the same level, and where there isn't a sense of segregation between you and I, one woman and the next woman. For example, the summit that I run in Bali, we've had a few years ago, we had a woman come from Kenya and she was in her 20s. It was the first time she'd left Kenya. She had to get her passport to come. And before that, she'd never even imagined leaving Kenya. And she spoke for the first time. She was a profound speaker. Absolutely profound speaker. And we've had, Mind Valley speakers. So, like, the spectrum is quite profound of the
Incredible.
women
Yeah.
who are drawn to that space. And something that I love is that every woman has the opportunity to speak or to share or bring something of herself to the space. But then also, every woman has something to learn from every single other woman. And I think there's something really powerful and profound and important in that. Especially in this space where, especially in personal development spaces, where often stages and things are kept for a particular demographic of person. So yeah, I find that I'm really passionate about that. And I think there's something really profound about trying on and putting on the persona of I'm an author, I'm a speaker. Like when we're speaking about I am, what does that then mean? What does that open up? What does that allow for us? And how does that then shift our own internal narratives between ourselves and the world and how we see ourselves and how the world in turn responds to us? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the summit in Bali. I want to actually share how it is that you came from where you came from to end up in Bali. I've never been to Bali, and we had this interaction around Bali. We should actually share with the listeners that we met during Influence with Miroslav, and we got to, it's a very intense workshop, but I felt that I wanted to connect with you, and we got to connect after. So my question is, what was it that took you to Bali? And then now that you get to create this incredible summit there.
Yeah. So 6 months before COVID, maybe about
Yes.
8 months before COVID, I was actually in the Amazon jungle. And I had a vision of myself bringing women together in a different jungle. And at the time I went back to Melbourne, I was like, yeah, cool, that was nice. Let's get on with life. And Bali started screaming at me. At the time, I was really fascinated by the Silk Road and the journey that traditionally the Silk Road is the trade route between the East and the West, and where gypsies would go and they would swap commodities, but also share language, stories, worldviews, philosophies, and understandings about how to navigate life. And I found this super fascinating. And so I decided to take off and to go traveling and to start in Bali and end in Spain, where I wanted to dance flamenco. And what happened was that I decided to leave at the end of January 2020. And within a few weeks, the world had shut down effectively. And thinking it would be 2 months, I decided to stay in Bali, and it ended up being 2.5 years. And
This is incredible.
yeah, and it's funny
Yeah.
because I was meant to be in Bali for 5 weeks, and I thought I would build a business in Bali in 5 weeks and then take off. And I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, I clearly have never done that before. Because I'm pretty sure every entrepreneur would laugh their head off and go, yeah, right.
No, I think we'd think you're very courageous and listening to the voices and the guidance.
Yes, extremely courageous and naive. But so basically, in that 2.5 years, 55 was created, and also the summit. And 55, and I knew that I wanted to do the summit, but I didn't know what would lead there. What would lead women to Bali, especially during a pandemic. Yes. And so basically in the middle of 2021, I was at this point where basically everything had crumbled around me. And I was like, okay, so what do I have? Like, what do I do? And I decided to hand it over to the universe. I gave the universe 3 weeks. It was on a tight timeline. And I decided I would write down everything that came up, all the ideas that came up. And what happened during that time was this concept of 55 was created. And originally it was only going to be, I was going to be sharing one woman's story a day on social media over 55 days. And what happened, I created a Google Doc and I wrote a list of 100 women I knew and I just sent it out. And what happened in that time was that women came to me and they said, we'd actually love to be a part of this. Like it was almost instantaneously. And I had women that I didn't know start jumping in my inbox and say, oh my gosh, I'd love to be a part of this. I had women, it just seemed like it was just building momentum. And I think it was largely because it was that time. I decided from the outset it would be global and it basically took off. And it was at a time where I didn't have a huge amount of energy. I felt like my confidence was low. I was like, I don't actually know where next to step. And I just went, well, I don't know what to do. This has got momentum. I'm just going to feed it. And I'm just going to show up every day and post a thing, literally so simply on Facebook, Instagram, nothing flashy at all. And what happened during that time was I started running like a couple of online calls for the women to connect with each other. through those, they said, why don't you make a book? At the same time, I really wanted to honor the Balinese women at a time where, 90% of the income in Bali had gone. And I decided I would make two books. One would be global and one would be Bali, Indonesia based. And that would be an impact book that the global women would support and help to get it published. And so when I decided to put the word out, I had one woman who was maybe interested. And I went, well, I have one that's maybe interested. Let's just put a post on Facebook and say I'm going to publish 111 women's stories this year. And I did. And then I went, oh crap, now I have to do it. So very much followed that thread. We launched our first two books and community just started growing with tendrils across the world. At the same time, I then decided to create the summit based on the fact that the women who were in the books would love to come to Bali and meet the Balinese women, but also to connect with each other. And we hosted our first summit just after COVID had finished. People were booking in for the summit while it was still COVID. And we had our first summit in the middle of 2023. And from there, I started working on the next two books. So the global book and the next one was the African book, in which case I knew 3 African women at that time. And I had people say, how are you going to make a book with 55 African women if you know 3? And I said, well, everybody knows somebody, so I'm not worried about that. So,
The threads continue,
right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
You ask the questions and
Yeah.
the answers will be given. Sometimes in the most random ways. And so we ended up connecting with 90 African women who we ended up publishing 55. So at this point, four of the 55 books have been created. There will be one more in the series, which will be the Aboriginal Australian women's book. And that will be the complete series, which is now really difficult because a year ago I decided to complete the series. And just recently, quite a few women have come to me and said, can we please be a part of the next Global 55? And I'm like,
maybe it's not over.
I was like, it was my plan to complete that out.
Yeah.
So,
Well, on that, completing that out, you've got another summit coming up.
yes.
There's a few things I want to go from what you just shared. I first actually want to touch on what I can really hear in what you're sharing is the actual art of surrender. Now, surrender comes up a lot on my chats, but I like to say in my own life and the trauma that it's literally like stepping on one stone, not knowing where the next foot is going to go or not even being able to see the next stone. And I really heard that a lot in your story. So do you want to share the way you feel surrendering has helped you to get to this point now? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a concept that I love and don't know where it came from, but I'm, cementing into it more and more and more. Charlie's Angels,
Yes.
the
Love it.
movie. That bit, I actually found out recently, it's called the fire starter scene. There's this scene where everything's going crazy and the 3 of them are kind of bouncing off all the things and fighting off the bad guys and all that stuff. And at some point they jump into the boat and they take off.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's in Full Throttle.
Yes.
I think of sometimes in business, I think that there's these Charlie's Angels moments where something in your brain just kind of clicks and you're like, I don't actually know what's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but somehow the pieces of the puzzle must align and realign themselves and the picture must come together in a whole other way. I think there's those moments that you just go, I actually have no choice right now, but literally to surrender, but also to lean in and have full trust and faith in myself, but also in something higher than myself too,
Yes.
that I'll be given enough of the pieces of the puzzle that if I'm tuned in and aware enough, I'll be able to, it's almost like play magic.
Like piece it back together almost, like know which piece falls into what when you surrender. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like you don't have to overthink it because the Charlie's Angels people, they didn't have time to think about all of those pieces in that moment. They were just like action mode, let's go. And they were just bouncing with what's in front of them. And I think we have those moments that I think some of it's intuitive, some of it is definitely about being connected, but also some of it is just trusting that whatever's going to show up in front of you, you know what to do and you know where to move. And there's I was thinking about force last week. I think I was in a space last week where I was trying to force things to happen.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah.
Yes.
It's important. Yeah.
Yes, and I think traditionally in business, like we're told, like, if something's not happening, you just need to work harder or push
Mm.
something along the line.
Yeah.
And sometimes we actually need to do the polar opposite. Like
Mhm.
I was up in the Gold Coast last weekend for Miroslav's training, and
Oh, yeah.
what came to me was that even though you're here to write a keynote, the most important thing you can do outside these hours is sleep.
Yes, I'm with you.
Like, that's the most important action you can
Yes.
do. Like, yes, you should be doing social media, you should be doing this, you should be following up messages and all that stuff,
Mhm.
but all I got was just show up for the days and sleep and trust that that's enough action.
Yes.
And sometimes that's the most important thing we can do because
Mhm.
then the answers come so much more easily.
Mm.
Yeah.
I always say, what is the next step I need to take? One
Mm.
step at a time,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And sometimes they're giant steps and sometimes they're tiny ones. But something I'm appreciating in this evolution of Aspire, the last evolution of Aspire, it moved and it grew really, really quickly, which was what I wanted. And it was just like catapult, 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 catapult.
Mm.
At the time I was thriving on it. Didn't know anything about nervous system regulation in those days. But in this evolution, there there have been parts of me that have wanted it to move faster and like all the shoulds have come up. The should. I should be up to here by now. I should be up to here by now. But what
Mhm.
I appreciated in taking that space over the weekend was I had a sense of pride in that this is growing in a stable, solid way and it feels grounded and it feels calm.
Mm,
And
I love
that's
that.
actually so beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that so much more exciting and nourishing than the catapult, catapult, catapult narrative that was such a big thing a few years ago?
And I think what is important there is that your foundation is strong. And when
Mm,
you're creating from a firm, strong foundation, then
mhm.
you are allowed to it moves at a different pace. It's a
Yeah.
very different feeling than I'm climbing, I'm climbing, I'm climbing this mountain.
I think there's also another side of it as well. Like maybe the mountain's not even climbing. Maybe it's just like there's a
Yes.
flower there. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just like we're a flower and the flower's just opening and the things can just fall
Yeah.
inside.
Yes. Metaphor, because I feel like, yeah, I've lived the climbing the mountain and wanting to get somewhere. Now I'm just able to observe and move when I'm asked to move. That's
Hugely, hugely. And like some days are still big and they're still busy.
yes.
Most days are still big and busy, but yeah, it's a different resonance, which feels much nicer.
Mm. Well, I love that you're on Living Story because for me, Living Story is about showing guests that really showcase what it is to live story and what it takes to not be stuck in the past and to move forward and let your story be unwritten. Can you share currently what it is you're excited about right now in this moment
Yes. What I'm excited about in this moment.
that you're working on? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the summit,
Hmm.
which is in the middle of August, 15th until the 19th of August. So that's in Bali. And it's beautiful and it's profound every single year. It's always felt different, but it's beautiful and it's profound. And I really enjoy the women who come together, the women that
Mm.
I attract. And I just enjoy having 4.5 days to just be
Mm.
in something that feels like a women's leadership playground. I love that it doesn't feel like it is something that has to be perfected. I love that it feels like I've never explained it in this way before, but this is where we're going. I love that it feels like it's a space where you can play and you can test and trial ideas and be supported and encouraged by a community of women.
Mm. I love it.
Yeah, who are there for the same purpose. And
Mm.
I love that for so many women, it's about testing and trying on like what it feels like to be on a global stage
Mm.
and a really beautiful stage as well. And to be doing that and then jumping in the pool like 15 minutes later. And, like all of the bits in between running around barefoot for 4 days. It's
And share the venue that you're holding it at because I know, but just share with the listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Soulshine,
Mm.
which is run by Michael Franti, who is an American muso. Beautiful, beautiful venue. It feels expansive and it feels like when you walk, like when you arrive there, you feel like something is opening up. You feel elevated. And when I decided to create this, I felt that I wanted to have it at Soulshine, but I asked some of the women who were a part of 55 what kind of venue they would love. And they all said the same thing, which was
Oh,
my feeling as well. And I love when you create stuff that is what you would want yourself. And so what the venue that they said that they wanted was something that felt like it was kind of upper market, like you feel like you're somewhere special, like you feel like
Yeah.
you're there to be a world-class leader. But at the
Yes.
same time, it's casual and you can sit on the ground, you can have bare feet, and it kind of merges those two worlds. It wasn't like you have to sit in a proper chair and be proper. Yeah,
Be
and
proper. I like that. Be proper. Be
exactly.
corporate, maybe. Be corporate proper.
Well, it's like at the end of the day, we're in Bali. Like we want to have
Yeah.
a coconut and,
Yeah.
all the things and wear our linen,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you do. So I love that it's an emergence of those two worlds. And even when we have the gala night on the last night, it's barefoot glam. So it's like put on your fancy dress and your makeup if you want to wear makeup, but rock it barefoot.
Beautiful.
So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is www.theaspire series. That's with an
Okay.
ASPIRE series
Okay.
.com. So there's a summit. There's also some other work that I'm doing in terms of helping women get published with their own books as well. And then later this year, we have a retreat to Spain too, which I mentioned Spain earlier. It's
Yes.
between a mistress mind, as in being a women's mastermind, and an immersion in flamenco dance culture as well. So, yeah, very, very cool.
You're an inspiration. If you could title this chapter in your life, what would it be?
That's an amazing question.
Oh, it just came to me.
Yeah. What would I call this chapter? The theme of this year's summit is on the other side of change, embrace, embody, empress. And the whole notion of the empress has been really big for me over the last 12 months before I even knew that the summit was going to have this theme. So I don't know if it would be the empress, but something around that, like that sense of coming together, like all of the pieces of the puzzle coming together. You know how there are different stages of even the hero's journey.
Yes.
Where you're stepping out, you're answering the call of the wild, you're on the journey, I feel like I'm at a point where all of the pieces are merging back together to create a new whole. Yeah. So it'd be something of that effect. Yeah.
I
Sense
love
of
that.
wholeness.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle Gardiner, for doing what you love and for being so brave and stepping into living your story. It's been so lovely to have you on Living Story series on One Space Love podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for creating this as well.
Thank you.